Okay, now we're going to get into vertical and horizontal lines in a little bit more depth than what we talked about before. Let's start with the vertical line. Okay, if I look at a vertical line, I'll just draw a vertical line right here. I'll say it passes through 5 on the x-axis. And we said before that the slope of a vertical line is undefined. And that's because the change in x is 0. There's no change. And if you look at the graph, if I just randomly plot points on here, this point here might be the point 5, 1. This might be the point 5, 2. This might be the point 5, 3. And if I come down here, maybe this is the point 5, negative 1. Maybe this is the point 5, negative 2. And if you notice, all my y values change as I go up and down the line. Because I'm moving vertically up and down the line, my y values change. But notice my x value always stays the same. That is because the x value passes through 5 up and down, and it never changes. It's always going through x equals 5. And that's why we say the change in x is 0. There is no change. So that way, when we do the change in y over the change in x to find my slope, it doesn't matter what the change in y is on the top. What matters is that I have a 0 in the denominator. I could have a change in y, let's say 10 on top. And it doesn't matter what that number up top is. If I'm dividing by 0, automatically it's undefined. It doesn't even matter what the top number is. Okay, now the equation. So we know the slope of a vertical line is undefined. The equation of a vertical line is always going to be x is equal to some number. Whatever we'll call it c for constant. So wherever it passes through, whatever value of x that is staying the same as that vertical line goes up, that is going to be your value of c. So in this particular case, my equation for this line is x equals 5. Notice that there is no y in my equation. It doesn't matter what y is. X is always going to be the same value. That's why you don't see y anywhere in this equation. So for a vertical line, the equation is always going to be x equals 5. Now also one more thing I want to point out. If I were to try doing the vertical line test here, if I draw my vertical line right here, it passes through all of the points on the line. This fails the vertical line test. So vertical lines are not functions. It's a line, but it is not a function. Now going into depth with my horizontal line, if I were to draw a horizontal line, let's say it passes through here at 3. Then if I start randomly drawing points on here, this might be the point 2, 3. This might be the point 1, 3. This would be the point maybe negative 1, 3. Maybe this is negative 2, 3. Notice what stays the same here is the y value. It's always 3. So for a horizontal line, my change in y is 0. There's no change. And we said the slope for a horizontal line is 0. And that's because when we look at the change in y over the change in x, the change in y would be 0. And it doesn't matter what's on the bottom. Let's say the change in x is 5. It doesn't matter what the bottom is. If the top is 0, 0 divided by any number is 0. Which is why the slope is always 0 for a horizontal line. Now the equation for a horizontal line, very similar to the vertical line, since x can change and be anything, it doesn't matter what x is, y is always the same number here. So my slope is 0 for a horizontal line, my equation is always going to be y is equal to whatever number it passes through on the y-axis. Whatever that value of y that stays the same for all the points, that is your equation. Y equals that number. And in this particular example, it would be y is equal to 3. Now, if I decide to do a horizontal line test for a horizontal line, a vertical line test for a horizontal line, it's going to pass. So, horizontal lines are functions. Okay, in example 1, it says find the equation of the line passing through 5, 8, and 6, 8, and state the slope of the line. Is the line a function? So if you notice here, what is staying the same is my y. So my equation is going to be y is equal to 8. And when I have a horizontal line, y equals 8, that means my slope is going to be 0, and it is a function. Now, if I did not notice, I should say, that those 8's were the same, and I could just use it as a special case that y is 8 because those 8's stay the same even though my x changes, let's say I start to go through that process of finding the slope, finding a point, and go ahead and put it into slope-intercept form or point-slope form. The first thing I would do is try to find my slope. Okay, so I would have 5, 8, and 6, 8. So when I go to find my slope, I would have the change in y over the change in x. So I would have 0 over 1, which is 0. So I would know that my slope is 0. So right away in step number 1, you should see that it's one of our special cases. If it's 0 or undefined slope, it's one of our special cases. But let's say you still didn't catch that yet. You didn't notice yet that it's a special case. So we're going to keep on going. So we're going to pick a point now. Let's pick 5, 8. It doesn't matter which one you pick. Just pick one of the points on the line. We'll call this x1, y1. Okay, I'm going to put this into my equation for step number 3. Y minus 8 is equal to 0 times x minus 5. Okay, now, if I go ahead and distribute that 0, I get 0, right? 0 times x minus 5 is 0. And then I add 8 to both sides. I still get the same thing. I just went through a little bit more work. So if you don't recognize off right away that it's a special case, you can still go through the same process I showed you before. It's a little bit more work, but you're still going to get the same answer. Okay, in example 2, it says, whoops, I have example 1 in there. I must have cut and pasted and forgot to take that out. In example 2, it says, find the equation of the line that passes through -2, 3 and -2, 0 and state the slope. Now, if you notice, I have the other special case of a vertical line. My x's are the same. So I have the equation x is equal to -2. And with the vertical line, our slope is undefined. Whoops. Let me fix that. Slope is undefined. And when you have a vertical line, that fails the vertical line test. So this is not a function.